Next time you undertan and overeducated sissies find yourselves whining about how hard your life is, just close your eyes for a minute and think about what life was like before we were a free market nation. I'm Bob Day, and I'll be right back with another great American story.
You need Kool-Aid, baby, I'm not fooling.
Believe it or not, there were people living here way back in the 1600s. Their lives were what those of you overeducated city folk in Frisco would call weird. Just for a few examples, most people got married in June because they took their yearly baths in May. However, since they were starting to stink already, the brides carried a big old bouquet of flowers to cover up the beau's bad BO. Hence, the still carried custom of the bride's bouquet. For most people back then, baths were just a big old tub filled with hot water. Once. That's right, once. The man of the house always got the first one. Then in this order, the male sons, the women, the children, and lastly the babies of the family would bathe in the same nasty, filthy, skanky water. And hence came the saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Most houses back in pre-Declaration America had thatched roofs, which were just thick straw piled high with a light frame under it. It was also a good place for animals to get warm with all the heat in the house, so the cats and other small animals like mice and bugs lived inside the roof. When it rained hard, it became slippery, and sometimes the animals would slip off of the roof. Hence, the old saying, it's raining cats and dogs. The floor was normally nothing but dirt, and it was there that we got the old American term, dirt poor. The wealthy normally had slate floors, which would get pretty slick in the wintertime, especially when they got wet. So they would just spread out straw on the floor, which they called thresh. And as the winter wore on, they'd add more thresh until finally when you opened the door, it would all start slipping out. So they would simply put a short wooden plank on the floor in the door, and it was called threshold. In some colonies, they ran out of places to bury the dead, so they'd just dig up coffins and reuse the graves. When reopening these coffins, 1 out of 25 coffins were found to have scratch marks on the inside. So they would just tie a string on the wrist of the corpse, run it up through a little hole in the coffin, and tie it to a bell. Then someone would have to sit out in the graveyard all night long, listening for the bell on what they called the graveyard shift. Then those poor folks who were buried alive could actually be, quote, saved by the bell, or otherwise they were considered a dead ringer. Well, this list goes on, but I just don't have the time for it all, so as my big buddy Bill in Winsboro, Texas would say, I gotta go, because it sounds to me like there's fitting to come a chunk floater. I'm Bob Day, and I've just told you another great American story.